Oregon could go undefeated this year. Oh, relax. I said could. Here we go.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks, which is why if you have not already, please like, comment, subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to or watch this show, which today is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. We'll talk about the stacked edge group for Oregon and a bunch of other mailbag questions. And Oregon basketball is just they just keep going. They keep looking, they keep asking, and I love it. We'll talk about that. But let's start with the possibility of Oregon going undefeated. So yesterday I talked about Oregon's football power index, and you can make whatever you would like of ESPN's FPI. It is a computer metric in which they evaluate offense, defense, special teams, and post-transfer portal. They think Oregon is the number 2 team in college football. I might think that's even a little bit too bold, but certainly I'd have them inside the top 5. And their chances of going 12-0, 15.7%, according to the computers. That's not me saying it. That's the computers saying it. It's not impossible, though. This is a feasible outcome. Would it be best case scenario? Obviously, it would be best case scenario. You look at teams that go undefeated. Yeah, every undefeated regular season in college football, you have breaks, whether that's in a game or a call in a game or whatever. Things have to bounce your way. We've seen Oregon do it before, long, long ago, in a galaxy in a conference far, far away, literally, RIP Pac-12. And I think that it is certainly feasible. I think 15.7% is about right. Going 12-0, certainly doable. I think Oregon's non-conference schedule definitely allows for that. You go Idaho, Boise State at home, at Oregon State. Those should be 3 wins. So when you look at where Oregon could suffer losses, look, I think there are only, frankly, a handful of games where I'd consider picking Oregon to lose the game going into the matchup. And right now, I don't know that I have a game because I feel confident about the Ohio State game, which on paper is Oregon's toughest matchup. October 12th, Autzen Stadium. Oregon's currently a 1.5-point underdog, according to our friends at FanDuel. You can go bet that if you'd like. I think Oregon wins that game. So then you start asking yourself, like, well, if you feel good about that game, if Oregon does win that game, let's say, their kicker misses a 40-yard field goal for the win. It happens to the best of us, happens to everybody. College kickers come for everybody. That's just the way that it goes. But certainly Ohio State is, on paper, going into the season, the toughest game on the schedule. What's the second toughest game? I mean, the first 5 games, I talked recently on the show, Oregon should go 5-0. You start with the 3 non-conference teams I mentioned, and those should all be wins. And then you start at UCLA, that should be a win. Host Michigan State, that should be a win. And then you play Ohio State. I mean, what's the next most losable game? Certainly Ohio State is a losable football game. I will not be shocked or wildly dismayed. Be disappointed if Oregon loses the game. But would it come out of the blue? Would it hit me like Arizona State in 2019 or Stanford in 2021 where it's like, oh my gosh, how did they lose that game? No, of course not. No, of course not. And I think there are only a small handful of games, and this is why I bring this up on today's show. I have seen tougher Oregon schedules to go undefeated. That FPI projection, by the way, had Oregon winning 10.8 games. Their win total on FanDuel is 10.5. That's tied for the highest in all of college football. Nobody has 11.5 because you're just looking at the regular season. So that means FanDuel and ESPN's FPI thinks, not the FBI certainly, they think that they're 1 to 2 losses on the schedule. And FPI thinks it's closer to 1. I think it's closer to 1. If you ask me right now, this is not an official prediction, just to be clear. I would probably lean Oregon going 11-1, but I also don't know where that loss would come from. I really don't, because I think Ohio State's the toughest game, but it's at home. Your next toughest game may very well be Michigan. Michigan is going to be a good team. Washington, who I'll talk about in a moment, is going to be a good team. Michigan on the road is a challenge. I mean, last time Oregon was in the Big House, it went fairly well. They were running fake statues of Liberty because, why not? It was the blowout of the Big House for Oregon in that particular game. Is that possible? Sure. Is it easy? No, it's not. They revamped their coaching staff. They brought down Wink Martindale from the NFL, who's been a longtime DC there and is a really well-respected defensive mind, to replace Jesse Minter, who went to the NFL with Jim Harbaugh to coach our guy Justin Herbert. So, and I'm stoked about all of that for Herb. But Michigan is going to be a good team. Are they going to be as good as Oregon? I don't think so. I think the difficult aspect of that comes with playing on the road. I also don't know who Michigan's quarterback is going to be. We've talked on this show before, and everydayers are well aware of this, and I thank you for being an everydayer if you are, but everydayers are well aware that Oregon and Ohio State, the biggest discrepancy between the two is quarterback. Oregon knows who its quarterback is going to be. Ohio State doesn't fully, but even if they do, Oregon has the better of the two. And that's Dylan Gabriel versus Will Howard. Michigan has even less of an idea who their quarterback is. Doesn't mean they can't find a guy who succeeds. It does mean through spring football, they have not had a guy reach out and snatch the job. And that's what happens when you have someone who's going to come in and kick everybody's butt and surprise everybody and play at a really high level. You go, oh, no, that guy right there. He's just better. The example that I often reference on the show, I don't think I have in a while, is Marcus Mariota. Came in 2012 after a Rose Bowl Pac-12 championship season, and Darren Thomas left the program. And you're like, what? Darren Thomas is a quarterback. No, they got this redshirt freshman guy, Marcus Mariota, or Mariota as we all call him. That's what a world beater at quarterback does. Is there's no debate. There's no discuss. You don't wonder who the Chiefs or Bills quarterback or who the Chargers quarterback is going to be. You just know. So that's the situation Michigan finds himself in. Their roster is good. It's better than Washington's. And by the way, Washington's roster, probably a little bit better than you think. They've done a lot of really good work in the transfer portal. Top 10 class for Jed Fish and company. That game is at home, and Oregon's got to win that one. Got to win. For a lot of reasons, Oregon has to win that game. And the next toughest game to win, I think, is at Wisconsin. But both of those games, Oregon's going to be a favorite. And obviously, they're an underdog at the moment against Ohio State. Maybe they'll be a slight underdog against Michigan. I'd be a little surprised, though. Ohio State hosting Michigan, according to our friends at FanDuel, is -9.5. I would think Oregon's probably a small road favorite against Michigan because they did lose a lot from last year. They're replacing several starters along the offensive line. I think their offensive line will be good, just not as good as it was last year. I think their defense will be good, just not as good as it was last year. And their quarterback play will take a step down, but they didn't use it a ton. So their formula is very repeatable. It's very translatable, which is why I have it as Oregon's second toughest game. I think Ohio State's just a much better team. And even though Oregon's at home, I think that's their second toughest game. But between Ohio State at home, at Michigan, hosting Washington, and going at Wisconsin, those are Oregon's four most losable games. But I can see a world readily available in which they win all of them. So then you'd have to avoid stumbles against teams like Purdue or Maryland or Michigan State, for instance. That's what it would come down to, and why going undefeated is not completely out of the question. Easy? Nope. But attainable? Yes. Absolutely attainable for Oregon. And I think the schedule is a big part of that. Let me know your thoughts in the YouTube comments or hit me up on X, formerly known as Twitter. I am a big fan of several things, including talking about breakout players. And you guys have some really, really good thoughts. And one guy just keeps popping up. We got to talk about him next. First, we got to talk about Game Time. Game Time makes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off, and they've got killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. with all that, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. You can save up to 60%, that's over half, buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc., whatever you want. They have flash deals as well. You can save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, second segment sip straight into the old mailbag. YouTube comments, X, formerly known as Twitter. You can drop me a note over there at @McLaughlin CFB or at Locked On Ducks. DMs and mentions wide open. If you want priority access and all sorts of other perks, go join the flock over at Subtext. That link in the description below wherever you listen to or watch this show. So, been talking about pop candidates and kind of who could have a bigger year than they did a season ago. One name that keeps coming up as a pop candidate in 2024 is Teitum Tuioti. So, I got no less than maybe half a dozen comments or messages or notes on subtext, that one of which I got late last night as you're listening to or watching this show, about Teitum Tuioti being a big pop guy. And I am a big fan of this selection. I think Oregon's edge group is as deep as we've ever seen it. This is the best defensive line across the board Oregon has had since 2014. And I do think it is better than last year, even with the loss of Dorless, which is substantial. I think Harmon and Caldwell, the talented group of freshmen, but the edge guys, I think can all be poised to pop. And I love the Teitum Tuioti love, because last year, Tuioti, Purchase, and Mateo came in the opposite order were ranked as such. Here, let me explain that way, way better. Good English there, Spencer. Mateo was the highest rated recruit. Then it was Blake Purchase. Then it was Teitum Tuioti. All three played significant snaps as true freshmen. That's really impressive. To play in any position, offensive or defensive line, in the trenches, your first year in college football, that is not a small thing. So that's the first part. Secondly, I think Teitum Tuioti is awesome. Maybe the most dynamic athlete of the bunch. I think you make an argument for Mateo, but I think from a versatility standpoint, Tuioti is actually the best of the group. And I like Blake Purchase. And one of you submitted Blake Purchase as a pop candidate. I could see it. Last year, he had 1 sack and 1 TFL. And that's me separating those stats, which is what college football should do. Because for some reason, I'm not kidding about this, by the way. And it's a little thing, but it really, really bugs me. Especially as a play-by-play announcer when I'm putting together my spotting boards for football games. TFLs should be completely separate from sacks. If you have 1 sack, you should have 0 TFLs until you tackle someone that's not a quarterback behind the line of scrimmage. But college football bundles them together. So if you look at a player's stats and see, wow, he had 6 sacks and 8.5 TFLs. He actually had 6 sacks and 2.5 TFLs. But do you see how ridiculous this is? Anyway, so I separate them out when discussing here on the show. So Blake Purchase had 1 sack last year. It came against Washington State against Cam Ward. He had that play where he chased him down from behind. It was awesome. Teitum Tuioti, though, had 2 sacks and 2 tackles for loss. I'll be pretty surprised if these guys both don't register more sacks than they had a year ago. And by the way, if you want bold takes, David sent in Teitum Tuioti as a pop candidate, said he will lead Oregon in sacks this year. I don't think that's crazy. Like going into last season of the bunch, yeah, of course I was most excited about Mateo. He was the most highly touted recruit. Right now, I'm like 51-49 more excited for Mateo than Tuioti. And by the way, this is not a jab at Blake Purchase. He is going to be a part of the rotation. Fully expect him to. Oregon needs him to be good. I think he can be a good football player. Tuioti looks like a beast. And the most shocking play in the spring game to me was when he was covering Terrence Ferguson down the field. You will not see Mateo or Blake Purchase doing that. That's wild. That's wild. You could argue that's not what the defensive assignment should be. Why you put an edge guy there? But he was in pretty good position. I think Teford dropped the ball uncharacteristically because he had a horrible spring game. I'm not that worried about it, though. I think Teitum Tuioti is a great great pop candidate pick for 2024. And I love the amount of love that he's getting. Like when you look at him on the field, and this can be the hard thing with true freshmen is, do you look like you belong? Are you physically ready to go? He is. He just is. And, when he was involved in plays, you looked and you went, man, that was good. And there was a play last year against Colorado where Purchase and Tuioti were converging on Shedeur Sanders for a sack, and you just looked and said, that's the future right there. Well, guess what? Going into their true sophomore season, you should make a leap. The future is now. Think about Jeff Bossa. His first year really playing linebacker, essentially his true freshman season at that position, to his sophomore season, massive leap. I think one of these guys will have that size of a jump where you go from just a starting caliber player who makes a play every now and then to you're pushing for an all-conference selection at the end of the year. Love the Teitum Tuioti love. I'm all on board with that. This question came in from Rick, and this is an important one. This is definitely an important question. Mailbagger, ... The suspense builds. As more and more people are getting rid of linear cable and with the Ducks move to the Big Ten, what is the best streaming service to ensure Duck fans won't be missing games? Thoughts? So this is a really good question to ask because Pac-12 Network, the lights will go out on, I think, June 30th. Like, it's not a thing anymore, and Oregon will never play over there. Again, the spring game was the last time that Oregon football would ever be on Pac-12 networks. They will be on Big Ten Network. So how do you get Big Ten Network? It is available through a cable service provider, DirecTV, Dish, Fubo, Sling, Xfinity. All traditional cable providers. I think Sling counts as a traditional one in which you can access the Big Ten Network. Now, according to the Big Ten Network website, and if you just go in and try to sign in with it, there are other options available to you as well. Hulu plus live TV. I'm sure we've all seen those ads before with guys like Damian Lillard and Joel Embiid and whoever. Hulu plus live TV can also get you access to Big Ten Network, and YouTube TV, which is a product I fully endorse. And I am not that they're not an advertiser here at the network. I'm just saying I've used YouTube TV before. Great product. just a great product. So that's the first thing is those are the ways to access Big Ten Network. They're actually broadcasting the first game against Idaho on August 31st, a game that I will be at in person. So I won't have to utilize it in this sequence or in this situation, but eventually Big Ten Network will come into play. So I think that's a really, really important question. Here's the second one, because this pertains to Oregon's second game against Boise State. Peacock is getting big in the sports world. They are carrying NFL playoff games, they're carrying college football games, and they are actually streaming Oregon's Week 2 game hosting Boise State. So those would be the ones as Oregon goes to the Big Ten that you have to have access to because the traditional cable channels will be there, right? The Fox, the CBS, because does the Big Ten have? Yeah, the Big Ten's got NBC and traditional cable, big time cable channels. They'll be there. But for the other games, Big Ten Network and Peacock, I think are the two you have to have access to watch Oregon games. So Rick, that is a great question for everyone to have that information. This question came in from Bud, and then we'll get to the latest in the N'Faly Dante saga. Kind of wild. Based on 2023 data, Oregon has the 5th highest income tax rate in the U.S. Gross. The following states are among those that have no income tax: Florida, Tennessee, Texas, Washington. How significant is this when it comes to recruiting and NIL income? It's a very interesting question because NIL money, when fed through the proper legal channels, is income for players, and it gets taxed. The government wants to take that. That's the way that, death, taxes, and insert the blank. So I don't get the sense that this is going to play a huge factor. I really don't. And that's a gut feeling from me. But the reason is that the guys who are getting this all this money, I don't think they're expecting to get it tax-free. And though NIL is a factor in kids' recruitment, very few list it as the primary reason. Now, maybe they don't want the bad optics of saying, yeah, I'm just looking for the biggest NIL offer. But even if you talk to kids off the record or talk to people who do, or just kind of get a feel for the recruiting landscape, NIL is a component, but it's rarely ever the primary number one component, despite what anti-Oregon, angry YouTube commenters, normally from USC, will tell you about Oregon's recruiting success. It's not all about NIL. It matters. Absolutely. No doubt about it. It is not the only factor in play. So with that in mind, I have a hard time believing that a kid who, and again, very few kids are going to make enough money to where they're going to care, right? Like Dylan Gabriel, I'm sure, is getting $1 to $2 million in NIL. But the kids coming out of high school who may be getting, I don't know, I'm spitballing, guessing numbers here, not reporting anything, like 50 to 100K, and they're going to play as true freshmen. Yes, to a lot of people, that's a significant amount of money, but I don't think it's so much to where the tax bill would be so large that they're going to think about it. Like NFL contracts, for some guys, that might be a consideration. I'm going to go play in Miami. No state income tax, and I'm going to make so much money. It's not changing the calculus a whole heck of a lot. I think it's a really interesting question, Bud, but I do not see that playing a factor in the recruiting landscape. And certainly, if a kid's worried about it, I'm sure Oregon can find just a little bit more, but you got to pay taxes eventually, and that's just the way it goes. And I don't think that it's going to be a huge factor, but a good thought. There have been some good thoughts publicly stated about N'Faly Dante. There have been some less good ones. We're going to focus on the good ones. And Oregon basketball is hosting a visitor on Wednesday, as in when this show is airing. How about that? All right, so I want to shout out Matt Prame of 24/7 Sports and the Odds and Audibles podcast, who is kind of leading the charge along with Jay Billis online in the N'Faly Dante campaign to get another year of eligibility, and rightfully so. Because what Prame has done a fantastic job of pointing out is there are guys who have played more games and more seasons in their college career than N'Faly Dante who are getting waivers. But Dante's not. And of course, they're appealing the denial that came down from the NCAA. But there were two names that stood out, and they exemplify why the NCAA is not being consistent. It's one thing if the NCAA were saying, no, we're not going to give extra years to any of these guys. But they're giving it to some, but not all. And that doesn't make a whole heck of a lot of sense. Because a lot of moves the NCAA makes don't make a whole heck of a lot of sense. So there's a guy at GCU. This is not someone Prame has talked about, but someone that I'm aware of, named Javon Blackshear, who just got another year of eligibility because of injury, which I have no problem with, by the way. I am 100% in favor of guys getting an additional year if they lost a season due to injury. And Dante basically lost 2 seasons due to injury. One of those was the COVID year, but one of those was his freshman year in the 2019-20 campaign. And there's this discrepancy about, well, he played more than 30% of the games, and he played in the second half of the year. Like, he played in 12 games. Then the next year he played 6. How is that? That's not even a full season's worth of games. That's what he's trying to get another year for, because the COVID year was a free year for everybody. And then there's the 3 seasons since then. That's why he should be able to get another year. So a couple guys that Prame pointed out. And again, I don't think Matt is out here bashing these kids for getting another year of eligibility or saying these guys are ridiculous or something like that. Like, he's just pointing out, hey, these guys are able to do this. Here are their circumstances. Why is Dante all that different? Because it's really not. So Kevin Easley Jr. played this last season at Coastal Carolina. He got a waiver from the NCAA to play for what will be his 5th school going into his 7th year of college basketball. 7th. You guys ever see Father of the Bride? Great movie. One of my family's all-time favorite movies. If you haven't seen it, it's Steve Martin and Martin Short, and it's hilarious, and also the second half of it's kind of sad, but it's very good. It's a very, very good all-time great movie. The first one, the original. I don't care about anything else that they did with those films. And there's a line in there where Steve Martin and the Banks family, they're meeting the McKenzie family, who are very wealthy. compared to the Banks family. And so he says, hey, do you have a restroom? And he says, yeah, you can get there. Just go up the stairs, down the hallway, 7th door on the left. Second, 7th. You heard me right. 7th year of eligibility for Kevin Easley Jr. This guy was playing for multiple seasons before COVID. And N'Faly Dante played 1 season before COVID. Yeah. Crickets from there's no one here to respond, so I guess that's rhetorical. But you understand. Another guy that Matt pointed out was Rylan Jones of Samford, who got another year of eligibility. That's fine. If the guy hasn't, played 4 full seasons plus 1 COVID year of college basketball, I'm here for it. He's played more than 20 games more. And N'Faly Dante has played more than 20 games fewer in his career. And Dante's looking for another season, hasn't been able to get one. So that's the latest. Is that those guys are getting years. The NCAA is giving all this stuff out like Oprah, but Dante, nope, denied. Like, what did he do? What does a guy have to do to just get another year of eligibility? So, yeah, that's the latest there. Also, I'm curious to know, I don't know if this pertains to the inside information Oregon might have with regards to whether Dante's appeal will be successful, but they keep looking at shooting guards. They hosted a transfer from Miami, and now there is an official visit for a 2024 recruit by the name of Jamari Phillips, 4-star shooting guard / small forward. He's in the 6'4", 6'5" range. He was committed to Arizona, and then Caleb Love announced, I'm coming back to college. Caleb Love is still in college. Go figure. Again, I think that's fine. I think it's good for the sport when big stars actually return to college basketball, because that's been a problem many a times over the years with the one and dones. But Oregon is hosting him for an official visit. He was committed to Arizona, and there are other schools that are going to take a look at him as well. BYU is one of those schools, and they just hired a new coach. And I would understand this a little bit more if it were a center. Like if you were bringing in options that led you to think, okay, if Dante doesn't win his appeal and his career is actually done, then this guy comes in and fills Dante's spot or takes a big man spot and Nate Biddle starts at the 5. Now, in the 2024 cycle, Oregon lost the commitment of 4-star Victorious Miller, who was actually very, very similarly rated in the 24/7 rankings, right around, a top 50, 55 player as Jamari Phillips, the guy that I'm talking about here. And any guy that was committed to play at Arizona, probably a very good player, you would think. I just don't know where he'd fit on the roster. Oregon has a lot of guards. Remember, I thought Oregon was done in the transfer portal on the wing when they brought in, Des Lindsey from the JUCO ranks, not expected to be a starter, but when they brought in Raheem Moss from Toledo, that's a guy who I was like, wait, that's got to be it. But then TJ Bamba came in and I was like, okay, Oregon's loading up on wings because they were kind of short on that position a year ago, and the depth wasn't amazing. Brandon Rigsby and Cario Oquendo, who both transferred out after the season, kind of faded as the year went on, and that's the way it goes sometimes. So Dana's clearly trying to backfill that depth, but I just look at this and go, another guard wing guy? Another one? I mean, if you think he's going to help the team, of course you go out and get him. Of course you make those sorts of moves. I just don't know where he would fit in. Like Oregon has got 3 bigs, 4 bigs. If you put Traore in there, Brandon Angel can kind of play big. So kind of, but it feels like they're missing a center more than they're missing a wing. But maybe Dana Altman's just trying to prepare for the injury bug that keeps biting his team. I don't know. But he's also a 2024 recruit, so maybe he doesn't feel like he needs to play a lot this year. He can learn behind guys like Raheem Moss and TJ Bamba and, see what Jackson Shellstad plays like and everything. Maybe that's what he'd be thinking. But still looking to make moves. They got scholarships available, so heck, why not? But that's the latest. That is the latest. We're talking recruiting tomorrow. Make sure you tune in for that with Brian Smith, of course. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.